Okay, off camera, I pulled the bolts out of this bumper, so we'll try and take it off. Okay, let's jump into part 6 of the truck series, the haul truck series. I'm going to be doing, again, a lot of tear down work of this truck in preparation for pulling that engine out and some other things. I kind of shift my attention from place to place on this truck as thoughts come up or ideas come up as to what to use, different components to use. And let me just say that it might be looking like I'm doing a lot of small work, but in the background, there has to be a lot of thought process going into this. Not only as to how the engine transmission is going to fit in the truck, but as to other things that go on with the truck. The interior seats, dash, the bed of the truck, everything has to be taken into consideration. And along with all of that stuff, there's the everyday, day-to-day shops things that have to be done or hauls that have to be done. Now let me do one thing, and this isn't cast in stone, or I haven't even made the offer to the guy yet, but I did find a rear axle on eBay that I might be interested in. And it just so happens that the axle is in North Carolina, and it just so happens that I have to make a haul to Virginia. So I'm going to be in pretty close proximity, sure a lot closer to North Carolina than Buffalo is, being in Virginia. So I'm thinking about making an offer to this guy on eBay for that rear axle, and then as I take the haul down to Virginia, just being able to pick it up and bring it back. I've actually got a back haul out of Ohio, so I could just throw it on the trailer and still get the back haul out of Ohio on the trailer also. So a lot of thought process goes into it, so just bear with me. There's going to be a lot of things discussed on the truck and a lot of tear down still on it, and there will be more tear down to come too. I'm going to try and keep it as brief as possible because probably a lot of you don't want to see the tear down, but to me, there's some interesting things that happen to this. One of the things you're going to see in this episode is the heat exchanger. Me tearing out the heat exchanger and what I found out about that. So here we go. Okay, off camera, I'm hammering on it. That is heavy. Okay, what I'm going to do is just start removing some of the radiator support stuff. This actually is a bracket for the hood support. Let's see if it's a hose. Yeah. Here's a question. How often do you see him put a drain hose on the radiator drain? It was plugged up. I just ran a piece of wire through it and then blew it out with the air hose. How come you didn't tell me it was dripping while I was out there doing that? Look at that radiator. You don't see radiators like that anymore. It's pretty solid. Not plastic. And not even dinged up in the front from debris and stones hitting it. Okay, there's that radiator fan shroud and the hoses out of it. I think I'm going to save those hose connections that go into the hoses that allow that bypass or heat exchanger to work. So not sure what I'm going to do with that radiator now. There was a ding on it from the back side, but it wasn't leaking, so let me see if I can show it to you. Hopefully you can see that. I'm not sure how that happened, but I'll take a look at it. Maybe I can pressurize it and make sure it's not leaking. I've got to get this. I'm going to take this piece, this radiator support thing out. There was a little rust down in here on it, so when I take it out, I'll make sure that I can, or see if I can patch that in too. Then it'll be time to start disconnecting. I've got to disconnect the hoses for the heater, other hoses, etc. That's going to I'm sorry, I got distracted there. Wires. I've got to disconnect the hoses, wires, and stuff like that off of the engine, and then I can pull that engine out of there. You know, in the last video, I paused for a moment and said that I was sorry I was looking at something. You have the two hoses that go into the heater core right over here, and very evident what they do. But you have this hose here, and that's exactly what I was looking at. Is this hose goes into the intake manifold, and then it goes back over there, and there's a line, a small line that comes off of it on this end, a tubing line, and then the hose continues and goes down someplace, and I'm not really sure what that is. Again, I'm not a Ford guy, but I've never seen anything like that. But what I'll do is I'll trace it out and let you know what it is. Okay, we're up under the truck now. One of the things that I told you that I was going to do is tell you where that line goes that comes out of the manifold. Well, this is the line right here coming down through, and pops over through the frame. And let me redirect the light here. This unit over here is what I thought was maybe the vacuum advance for the brake system, because it does have brake lines coming out of it. That is that line that comes out of the manifold right there that goes into this thing. And that vent that I told you that I had found up in the cab that I didn't know what it was for, this is that vent tube that comes out of this thing. So I'm not sure. What I'm going to do is pull this line apart and see if in fact that hose that comes out of the manifold is a huge vacuum line, but let me pull it apart and let's find out. Going down below and pulling off of that hose down below because it's so cramped down there and the camera angles and everything, the lighting. I'm going to pull the hose apart up here. I just cracked this thing open and it's not going to give. Maybe this one will give better. Okay, so there's no fluid in it, so apparently it is a big vacuum line. Okay, so that mystery solved. Now these are the backside fittings for that tank heater, and technically these should be water. There should be no antifreeze in this because that little unit up in front, and I'll show it to you in a minute, is a heat exchanger. So it they wouldn't have put antifreeze into the tank, or shouldn't have put antifreeze into the tank. What? What? It's gas. Okay, let me look at this again. Okay, I'm back on those lines. I crawled underneath the truck, and these lines go directly from that exchanger up in the engine compartment, the heat exchanger, back to what I'm assuming is a fuel pump back there, but then it's just looped together. I do not understand it at all. I'm not understanding why they had a heat exchanger on a gas line. Kind of common on diesels because diesel fuel will gel if it gets real cold if you don't have additives in it. But on a gas line, I'm not really sure why they did it at all. And it looks like it's been done. I've got to assume that American LaFrance or whoever modified the truck for a fire truck, it was American LaFrance or Ward LaFrance, I forgot which one it was. But I've got to assume that they probably did it because it looks to be like an old installation. I just don't want to give it up. Let me bring you back. I gotta get something to hold that copper line to keep it from, it's just turning with the flare nut. Here's one of the pieces of copper that went from these fittings over to the pump. Piece number 2. Okay, here we are disconnecting the line from that exchanger. They must be tied on to something down there because they're pretty solid. Let me see if I can figure out what's going on. Okay, heat exchanger off. So apparently this gas line that was connected to this tank up in here came back through here. That's this line. This line looped around, came through that pump and came back in through these heat exchanger lines. So gonna have to get up underneath the truck and figure out how it tied in to the block fuel pump. So when I get to that, I'll let you know. I'm going to pull this out. What I'm going to do is just cut it off and pull all of this garbage out of here. Going to cut these lines off for now. These 2 lines that went to the heat exchanger because they're bolted up to the frame underneath there. So just going to cut them off for now. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up this video right here. I still haven't traced out those lines to see how it went to the fuel pump, but I kind of understand what they did. I certainly do not understand why they did it. I've talked to a couple of other people in the automotive industry, kind of old school people, and they don't understand why they put a heat transfer on a gas line. I mean, I'm really baffled about it. If it was diesel fuel, I would totally understand it. Gas, I'm not really sure why they did it. Unless maybe some Ford guy out there knows. The only thing that came to my mind was the possibility of warming the fuel up to help stop vapor lock. But I'm not really sure. Did this engine, the 391, have an issue with vapor lock? So just leave a comment, but I'm going to end the video here. I've got to make a run, like I said in the beginning of the video, and there's probably going to be something new coming into the shop associated with this project.